On America's loneliest highway, a life-changing encounter is about to unfold when the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company desperately flees from relentless paparazzi. She finds refuge in the last place anyone would look, a weathered 18-wheeler, driven by Mike Thompson, a humble trucker who's never earned more than minimum wage. He has no idea that his passenger, hidden beneath a baseball cap and old sweatshirt, controls more wealth than he'll see in 10 lifetimes. This isn't just another story about crossing paths. It's about how a single night on the open road will shatter every boundary between two vastly different worlds. What happens when the woman who has everything discovers that the one thing she truly needs can only be found in the heart of a man who has nothing? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The fluorescent lights of the truck stop buzzed overhead as Mike Thompson pulled his logbook from the worn leather bag beside his seat. 15 years of routes, deliveries, and endless miles were recorded in books just like this one, each entry a testament to an honest day's work. He glanced at his newest passenger through the rearview mirror, her delicate hands fidgeting with the frayed edges of a sweatshirt that looked too new to have such damage. Something about her didn't add up. The designer watch, peeking out from beneath her sleeve, didn't match the carefully cultivated appearance of someone down on their luck. But Mike had learned long ago that the road had its own rules, its own way of bringing strange stories to life. He pulled the creased photo of his daughter Sarah from behind his sun visor, her high school graduation picture, taken just 3 months ago. Her smile radiated the same determination that had gotten her accepted into Cornell University. The same determination that kept him awake at night, wondering how he'd ever afford the tuition that his truck driving salary couldn't cover. "First time hitching?" he asked, breaking the tense silence that had filled the cabin since they'd left the truck stop. The woman startled slightly, as if lost in her own thoughts. "Is it that obvious?" Mike allowed himself a small smile. "Most folks who've done this before know to bring water at least. There's a bottle in the cooler behind my seat if you're thirsty." She reached for the cooler with practiced grace that betrayed years of expensive finishing school lessons. Every movement was precise, controlled, nothing like the rough-edged desperation he usually saw in highway wanderers. "Thank you," she said, her voice carrying an authority that seemed at odds with her current situation. I appreciate you stopping for me." "Road gets lonely out here," Mike replied, adjusting his mirrors as the sun began to set. "Sometimes company's worth the risk." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "Though usually folks have a destination in mind when they stick out their thumb." The woman took a long drink from the water bottle, buying time before she answered. "West," she said finally. "As far west as you're going." Mike nodded, knowing better than to push. Everyone on the road was running from something or to something, sometimes both. He'd learned to read the signs over the years, the way she kept checking her phone but never made a call, how her eyes darted to every passing car, the tension in her shoulders that never quite eased. The radio crackled with weather reports and traffic updates, filling the space between them with comfortable static. Mike caught glimpses of her in his mirror, watching as she slowly began to relax into the rhythm of the road. Her expensive perfume mingled with the familiar scents of diesel and leather, creating something entirely new in his cabin. A news bulletin cut through the static. "Breaking news in the business world as speculation continues about the unexpected absence of tech CEO Sophia Chen from crucial merger talks." Mike reached to change the station, but not before he caught his passenger's sharp intake of breath. "Everything okay back there?" he asked, though he kept his eyes fixed firmly on the road ahead. "Fine," she replied too quickly. "Just tired. It's been a long day." Mike nodded again, letting the lie settle between them like so many others he'd heard over the years. Whatever her story was, it would come out in its own time. The road had a way of wearing down pretenses, strip by strip, mile by mile. He checked his logbook one more time, calculating the hours until his next mandatory rest stop. The numbers danced before his tired eyes, numbers that never quite added up to enough when he looked at Sarah's college bills. But tonight, somehow, those familiar worries felt different. Something about this passenger, this night, this stretch of highway, it all added up to something he couldn't quite name. As darkness settled over the interstate like a heavy blanket, Mike Thompson drove on, carrying cargo far more precious than any manifest could record. Behind him, his mysterious passenger watched the world slip by through tinted windows, each mile taking her further from whatever she was fleeing, or maybe, though neither of them knew it yet, closer to exactly where she needed to be. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Mike steered his truck around another bend. The rejection letter from Cornell's financial aid office lay heavy in his glove compartment, a constant reminder of dreams deferred. His passenger had dozed off an hour ago, her practiced composure slipping away in sleep, revealing worry lines around her eyes that expensive creams couldn't quite hide. The truck's radio crackled with static before clearing, continuing coverage of the Silicon Valley scandal as sources report CEO Sophia Chen's unexpected departure may be linked to whistleblower allegations of corporate. Mike quickly lowered the volume, but his passenger was already stirring, tension visibly returning to her shoulders. "Bad dreams?" he asked, keeping his voice casual. She straightened in her seat, mask of composure sliding back into place. "Something like that." Her hand instinctively went to her neck, searching for something that wasn't there. "How long was I sleep?" "About an hour. We're coming up on Sterling. Might need to stop soon. Storm's moving in fast." Lightning split the sky ahead, illuminating her face in harsh white light. For a moment, Mike thought he recognized her from somewhere, a magazine cover maybe, or a news segment, but the impression faded as quickly as the lightning. "I'd rather keep moving," she said, an edge of anxiety creeping into her carefully. Modulated voice. Mike gestured at the darkening sky. Sometimes the smart choice is knowing when to wait it out. Roads no place for heroes. He'd learned that lesson the hard way, back when Sarah was small, and he'd tried to outrun a tornado to make a delivery deadline. The memory of her tears when he finally made it home still haunted him. His passenger, she'd given her name as Jane, though he doubted that was real, pulled out her phone again. The screen's blue glow illuminated a string of missed calls and unread messages before she quickly darkened it. "Problems at home," he ventured. "Something like that," she repeated, then seemed to catch herself. "Work, actually, though sometimes it's hard to tell the difference." Mike understood that better than she might think. The road had been his home and workplace for so long, the boundaries had blurred years ago. "Know what you mean? Though my office comes with a better view than most." That earned him a genuine smile, the first he'd seen from her. "I suppose it does. My office." She trailed off, catching herself again. "Well, let's just say the view isn't worth the price of admission anymore." The storm was getting closer now, fat raindrops beginning to spatter against the windshield. Mike flicked on his wipers, their steady rhythm matching the thoughts turning over in his mind. Whatever this woman was running from, it was big enough to make national news, big enough to have her jumping at shadows. He'd seen his share of runners over the years, abused spouses fleeing with nothing but hope and highway dust, kids trying to escape dead-end towns, even once a bank robber who'd made it 3 states before the law caught up. But something about this felt different. The way she held herself, the careful precision of her words, the subtle authority that leaked through her disguise. This wasn't someone running from the law. This was someone with power trying to disappear. The truck stop ahead glowed like a beacon through the rain. Mike signaled his turn, already anticipating his passenger's objection. "Please," she said right on cue. We can't stop here." "Storm's only getting worse," he replied, keeping his voice steady. And I've got regulations about driving hours. Law's the law, even out here. She flinched at the word law, and Mike filed that reaction away with all the other pieces of this puzzle he was slowly assembling. 10 minutes, she negotiated, sounding for all the world like someone used to making million-dollar deals. Just enough to fuel up and check the weather report. Mike pulled into the truck stop, positioning his rig carefully against the wind. 10 minutes, he agreed, though they both knew the storm would make liars of them. But I'm not risking my license or my rig for anyone's schedule, not even yours. Jane. The way she tensed at his emphasis on her false name told him all he needed to know. Whoever she really was, whatever she was running from, it was about to catch up with them. The storm would make sure of that. The truck stop's neon sign flickered. Against the darkening sky, its promise of 24-hour diner, reflecting off the rain-slicked pavement. Mike pulled his jacket closer as they made their way from the truck to the building, his passenger hurrying beside him with her head down against the wind. Inside, fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the nearly empty diner. A tired waitress looked up from her crossword puzzle, and an elderly couple huddled over coffee in a corner booth. On the mounted TV, a weather map showed the storm system in angry red and purple swirls. "Looks like we're stuck here for a while," Mike said, sliding into a booth away from the windows. "Might as well get comfortable." His companion, he still couldn't bring himself to call her Jane, perched on the edge of her seat like she might bolt at any moment. Her eyes darted between the door and the television, which had switched to a business news channel. "I'll have coffee," she told the approaching waitress, then added almost as an afterthought, "Please." "Make that too," Mike said. "And maybe a menu?" The waitress dropped off 2 laminated menus without a word. Mike watched his passenger pretend to study hers, though her attention kept straying to her phone, which she'd placed face down on the table. "You know," he said carefully, "in my experience, people running from something usually have a good reason, sometimes even a right reason." She looked up sharply, meeting his eyes for the first time since they'd entered the diner. "What makes you think I'm running from anything? 15 years on the road, you learn to read people, the way they hold themselves, what they're not saying." He paused as the waitress returned with their coffee. "Plus, most people don't hitch rides in designer boots." She glanced down at her feet, a flicker of dismay crossing her face. "I didn't exactly plan this trip." "Nobody ever plans the important ones," Mike said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "My wife, before she passed, used to say the best journeys are the ones that find you." Something in his tone made her soften slightly. "I'm sorry about your wife. Sarah was 7 when it happened. Cancer." He pulled out his wallet, showing her the worn photo he kept there. "Alice always said Sarah had her smile." "She does," his passenger said softly, studying the picture. Then almost to herself, "My mother died when I was 12. Father buried himself in work after that, built an empire to forget his grief." Thunder crashed outside, making them both jump. The lights flickered ominously. "Transformers gonna blow." "If this keeps up," the waitress called from behind the counter, "hope y'all aren't in a hurry." On the TV, the business channel's ticker scrolled past. Breaking. Sources claim Chen's absence linked to merger controversy. Board meeting delayed. Stock prices volatile. Mike watched his companion's knuckles whiten around her coffee. A cup. The pieces were falling into place, but he kept his voice casual. "Quite a storm brewing in the business world too, looks like." She set her cup down carefully. "The biggest storms are always the ones inside boardrooms. Trust me." "That sounds like experience talking. Let's just say I've weathered my share of corporate hurricanes." She attempted a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, though running away probably isn't the most professional response. "Sometimes running away and running toward look the same from the outside," Mike offered. "Question is, which one are you doing?" Before she could answer, her phone buzzed against the table. The name Harrison flashed on the screen before she could snatch it up, but not before Mike caught a glimpse of the message. "Board meeting moved up. Crucial vote tomorrow. Where are you?" The lights flickered again, longer this time. When they steadied, Mike noticed his companion's hands were shaking slightly. "Decisions have consequences," she said finally, staring into her coffee as if it held answers. "Even the ones we don't make, maybe especially those. That's why you're out here, avoiding a decision." "No," she said, and for the first time, real steel entered her voice. "I'm out here because I already made one, the right one, the hard one. And now—" She gestured helplessly at her phone, which had started buzzing again. Mike leaned back, considering. "You know, my truck might be slow, but it's heading west, away from whatever storm you're trying to outrun, or toward whatever you're trying to reach." For a long moment she said nothing. Outside, the storm raged on, wind howling against the diner's windows. Finally, she reached for her phone and turned it off completely. "West sounds good," she said quietly. "At least until I figure out which one I'm doing, running away or running toward." The waitress appeared, with plates of eggs and toast, neither of them remembered ordering. "On the house," she said with a knowing look. "Storm food. Looks like you two might be here a while." As if in response, the lights went out completely, plunging the diner into darkness, broken only by occasional flashes of lightning. In that strange, intermittent illumination, Mike thought he saw something like relief cross his companion's face, as if the darkness might finally offer the cover she'd been seeking all along. Emergency lights cast a soft amber glow through the diner as the waitress distributed battery-powered lanterns among the few remaining customers. The elderly couple had already retreated to their RV in the parking lot, leaving Mike and his mysterious companion nearly alone in the hushed darkness. "Got a backup generator," the waitress explained, setting a lantern between them. "But it only powers the essentials. Kitchen's closed now, health regulations." She paused, then added with a knowing look, "But I can still make coffee. Might be a long night." Thunder rattled the windows as Mike pulled out his wallet, an old photo slipping onto the table. His companion caught it before it could fall, and, in the lantern light, her carefully maintained facade cracked just slightly. "She's beautiful," she said softly, studying the image of Mike's late wife. "You can see the kindness in her eyes." Mike's throat tightened. "Alice never met a stranger she couldn't help. Used to drive me crazy, the way she'd invite random folks to dinner, give away our last dollar to someone who needed it more." He smiled at the memory. "Taught me more about real wealth than any bank account could." His companion's fingers traced the photo's worn edges. "My father would say that's bad business sense." "Probably," Mike agreed. "But Alice always said the best investments don't pay in dollars." The woman's composure slipped further, revealing something raw and honest beneath. "I used to believe in things like that, before—" She trailed off, her hand unconsciously moving to her neck where an absent necklace should have been. "Before the boardroom hurricanes?" Mike prompted gently. She let out a small, bitter laugh. "Before I became the hurricane." Setting the photo down carefully, she met Mike's eyes. "Do you know what it's like to hold thousands of people's livelihoods in your hands? To know that one decision, one signature, could destroy families, communities?" "Can't say that I do," Mike replied. "My decisions mostly affect me and Sarah and whatever cargo I'm hauling." "I envy that simplicity." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, seeking warmth. "Tomorrow morning my board is voting on a merger. On paper it's perfect. Stock prices will soar, shareholders will be ecstatic, but 3 factories will— close. 2,000 jobs lost." Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "All because I found proof that someone's been cooking the books, inflating values, hiding losses. If I don't stop it—" A particularly violent thunderclap cut through her words. In the brief silence that followed, Mike reached into his jacket and pulled out a creased envelope, the college rejection letter he'd been carrying like a weight. "My daughter got into her dream school," he said. "Full academic scholarship. But room and board, books, meals, even working double shifts. I can't make the numbers add up." He smoothed the letter on the table. Sometimes the simplest decisions are the hardest ones. His companion stared at the letter, then reached for her abandoned phone. "Maybe," she started, then stopped herself. "I could—" "No," Mike said firmly. "Whatever you're thinking, that's not why I told you. Sarah's future is my responsibility, just like those factory workers are yours." Something shifted in her expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Most people, when they figure out who I am, they start seeing dollar signs. "I see someone running from a hard choice," Mike said, "but maybe running isn't the answer. For either of us." The waitress appeared with fresh coffee and an update. "Highway patrol says roads are closed. Power's out for miles. You folks might want to get comfortable." As if to emphasize the point, wind howled through the diner's eaves and rain pounded against the windows with renewed fury. In the strange, shadowy light, Mike watched his companion make a decision. "My name isn't Jane," she said quietly. "It's Sophia. And tomorrow morning, I'm supposed to be in a boardroom in New York, either saving 2,000 jobs or destroying my company's stock value." She took a deep breath. "I don't suppose your truck could make it to Manhattan by dawn?" Mike considered. The storm, the closed roads, the impossible distance. "No," he said honestly, "but maybe that's not where you need to be." Sophia Chen, CEO of one of the largest tech companies in the world, sat in a darkened truck stop diner, looking more lost than any hitchhiker Mike had ever picked up. "Then where?" Before Mike could answer, the diner's door burst open, letting in a gust of wind and rain, and a man in a suit who looked entirely out of place in rural Nebraska. His eyes locked onto Sophia, and Mike watched her whole body tense. "Ms. Chen," the man said, water dripping from his expensive coat, "the board sent me to find you. We need to talk." Mike had seen that look before, in the eyes of cornered animals, in faces of people who'd run out of road. Sophia's fingers curled around her coffee cup like it was the only solid thing left in her world. The suit-clad man took a step closer, water pooling beneath his Italian leather shoes. "Harrison," Sophia said, her CEO voice slipping back into place like armor. "I thought I made myself clear when I left." "The board is concerned," Harrison replied, glancing dismissively at Mike before pulling up a chair uninvited. "Disappearing before a crucial vote doesn't inspire confidence, Sophia, especially given the sensitive nature of what you think you've found." Lightning flashed outside, throwing harsh shadows across Harrison's face. In that brief illumination, Mike caught something cold in the man's eyes that had nothing to do with the storm. "It's not what I think I've found," Sophia said quietly. "It's what I know. And you know it too, don't you, Harrison? Because you helped hide it." The waitress approached with a coffee pot, but Harrison waved her away. "Let's not do anything hasty. Think about the shareholders, the market impact. Your father built this company from nothing. Would he want to see it all torn down over a few accounting irregularities?" Mike watched Sophia flinch at the mention of her father. Her composure cracked just slightly, revealing the weight of legacy and expectation beneath. But when she spoke, her voice was steady. "My father taught me that a company is more than its stock price. It's people, families, communities." She pulled out her phone, turning it on for the first time in hours. "And I have proof that you and the board knew about the toxic assets, knew those factories were viable. You manufactured this crisis for the merger." Harrison's pleasant mask slipped. "Be careful, Sophia. Some roads you can't turn back from." "Is that a threat?" Mike asked, speaking for the first time. Harrison startled, as if he'd forgotten the truck driver was there. "This is a private business matter," Harrison said dismissively. "It doesn't concern you." But Mike had seen enough. 15 years on the road taught you to read people, to spot trouble coming like dark clouds on the horizon. He shifted slightly, positioning himself between Harrison and Sophia. "Way I see it," Mike said calmly, "anything discussed in my truck becomes my business. And right now, my passenger is saying you helped cook the books to destroy 2,000 jobs. That sound about right? Thunder rolled overhead as Harrison's face darkened. You have no idea what you're involving yourself in, driver. This is bigger than a simple truck driver could understand, Sophia cut in, steel entering her voice. That's always been the board's problem, hasn't it? Looking down on the people who actually build the company, who make it work. She stood, surprising both men. I'm not going back, Harrison. Not until the truth comes out. Don't be naive, Harrison snapped. One word from me, and your little crusade ends. The board will remove you. Everything your father built. My father built a company that cared about its people, Sophia said. I'm going to honor that legacy, not the stock price. She pulled something up on her phone, finger hovering over the screen. I just sent copies of everything, all the proof, all the documents, to 3 different news outlets. If anything happens to me, if you try to force this merger through, it all goes public. The color drained from Harrison's face. You're bluffing. Try me. Sophia's voice was quiet, but carried an authority that filled the darkened diner. Now get out, and tell the board I'll be there for the vote, with the truth. For a moment, Harrison looked like he might argue, but something in Sophia's stance, or maybe in Mike's steady presence beside her, made him think better of it. He stood, straightening his wet coat. You're making a mistake, he said, but the threat in his voice had lost its edge. No, Sophia replied. For the first time in years, I'm fixing one. They watched Harrison disappear into the storm. In the silence that followed, Sophia's hands began to shake. Mike gently pushed her coffee cup closer. Thank you, she whispered, for understanding, for standing with me. Mike thought about Sarah's college dreams, about Alice's belief in helping strangers, about all the crossroads he'd seen on America's highways. Sometimes, he said, the right road isn't the easy one. The storm raged on outside, but in the amber glow of the lantern, something had changed. The CEO and the truck driver sat in comfortable silence, 2 unlikely allies brought together by fate and choice, watching the rain and waiting for dawn. Dawn broke over the highway, painting the storm-washed world in soft pastels. The rain had finally stopped, but Mike's truck was making sounds that set his teeth on edge. He pulled into a small repair shop just outside of North Platte, the gravel crunching under his tires. Could be the timing belt, he muttered, more to himself than to Sophia. His passenger had been quiet since their confrontation with Harrison, thumbs flying over her phone screen as she orchestrated whatever corporate chess moves would come next. How long will repairs take? She asked, finally looking up. The CEO. Mask had slipped back into place, but exhaustion showed in the shadows under her eyes. Depends what's wrong. Could be an hour, could be... A loud clang from under the hood finished his sentence. White steam billowed out, carrying the distinct smell of mechanical trouble. Sophia was already reaching for her phone. I can call a car service, get to the nearest airport. In North Platte? Mike chuckled. Mom, we're about as far from private jets as you can get. Before she could respond, an older man in oil-stained coveralls emerged from the repair shop. Sounds like timing belt's gone, he called out. Gonna be at least 3 hours, maybe more. Sophia's designer blouse was already showing wrinkles from their night in the diner. She glanced at her phone, then at the steam still rising from the truck. I don't suppose you have any faster options. The mechanic squinted at her, then at Mike. Lady, out here, fast fixes usually mean more trouble down the road. Something in his words made Sophia pause. She looked at her phone one more time, then deliberately turned it off. You know what? You're right. She surprised both men by rolling up her sleeves. Mind if I take a look? Mike raised an eyebrow. You know engines? I grew up in my father's garage before it became a tech empire. She was already moving toward the truck, her designer boots crunching on gravel. He believed in understanding the basics before trying to revolutionize them. The mechanic, his name tag read Earl, handed her a flashlight without comment. Sophia leaned under the hood with practiced ease, her movements sure despite her unlikely attire. See here? She pointed to something Mike could barely make out. The belt's not completely gone, but these grooves show uneven wear. Probably been building up for a while. Earl let out a low whistle. Lady knows her engines. Sophia, she corrected, already reaching for a wrench. And I used to rebuild carburetors with my father on Sundays, before board meetings, and shareholders became my whole life. She worked methodically, her expensive blouse collecting grease stains that would never come out. Mike found himself holding tools for her, watching in amazement as the CEO of a Fortune 500 company diagnosed and repaired his timing belt with the precision of a seasoned mechanic. "My father would have loved this shop," she said softly, deep under the hood. "He always said you could tell everything about a person by how they maintained their equipment." She emerged with a streak of grease across her cheek. "When did you last have this belt checked?" Mike felt heat rise in his face. "Been a while. Money's been tight with Sarah's college." Sophia's eyes softened. "Sometimes we neglect the maintenance trying to keep everything else running." She wasn't just talking about the truck anymore. "I've been so focused on quarterly reports and stock prices, I forgot why my father started the company in the first place. To make things work better, to help people work better." Earl appeared with fresh coffee in paper cups. "Ain't often I see someone in clothes that expensive who knows their way around an engine." "These clothes." Sophia looked down at her ruined blouse and laughed, a real laugh, without any of the careful control she usually maintained. "They're just costumes. This," she gestured to the grease on her hands, "this feels real." Mike watched her work, seeing not the CEO who had faced down Harrison, but the mechanic's daughter, who still remembered Sunday afternoons with her father. When she finally closed the hood, the sun was high in the sky. "Should run smoother now," she said, wiping her hands on a rag. "But you'll need to get that water pump checked soon. The bearing's starting to go." "How much do I owe you?" Mike asked. "Earl?" The old mechanic shook his head. "Way I see it, the lady did all the work. Coffee's on the house." He paused, looking at Sophia. "You ever get tired of running that fancy company? There's always work for someone who knows their way around." "An engine." Sophia's smile held a touch of wistfulness. "I might just take you up on that someday." She looked at her phone, still turned off. "But first, I have some maintenance to do on my father's company." The distant whoomp-whoomp of helicopter blades made them both look up. A news chopper circled overhead like a mechanical vulture, too close for comfort. Mike didn't hesitate. He turned off the main highway onto a narrow county road. "Harrison works fast," Sophia muttered, pulling up something on her phone. "They've got photographers stationed at every major interstate junction between here and New York." She looked up at Mike. "I'm sorry, I'm making your job impossible." Mike guided the truck deeper into the Nebraska countryside, where sprawling cornfields stretched to the horizon. "Job's just getting cargo from point A to point B. Sometimes the scenic route's better anyway." Sophia's phone buzzed with another incoming call. The screen showed "Board Chairman." She declined it with a swipe of her thumb, then pulled out a thick manila envelope from her bag. "I suppose it's time you knew what you're really involved in." She spread documents across the truck's dashboard, spreadsheets, emails, financial reports. To Mike, they were just numbers, but the way Sophia's hands shook as she handled them told him they meant much more. "3 factories," she began. "Perfectly profitable. But Harrison and the board manufactured a crisis. They've been hiding assets, inflating debts, all to justify closing them for the merger." She pulled out one particular sheet. 2,000 jobs, entire communities built around these plants, all sacrificed for a stock bump and merger bonuses. Mike kept his eyes on the winding road but asked, why would they do that? Because it's easier than innovation, easier than actually fixing problems. Bitterness crept into her voice. "My father built this company by solving real problems for real people. But somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing people and started seeing only profit margins." A semi roared past in the opposite direction, making the truck shudder. Mike waited until the dust settled before speaking. My first driving instructor told me something I never forgot. He said, "The load in your trailer ain't just cargo. It's somebody's livelihood, somebody's dreams, somebody's needs. Makes you drive different, thinking that way." Sophia was quiet for a long moment, staring at the documents that held so many lives in their balance. When did we forget that companies are built by people, not spreadsheets? Same way we forget anything important, Mike said. Little by little, until one day you look up and don't recognize what you've become. Their eyes met briefly in the rearview mirror. Something electric passed between them, understanding perhaps, or something deeper. "The board meeting is tomorrow morning," Sophia said softly. "Once I present this evidence, there's no going back. The stock will tank. My father's company will be your father's company again," Mike finished. "One that builds things, helps people, like he meant it to be." Sophia gathered the documents, holding them like they were made of glass. "You make it sound so simple." "Simple ain't the same as easy." Mike turned onto an even smaller road, one that wasn't on any GPS. "My wife used to say that doing the right thing is like driving through a storm. Scary as hell, but the only way out is through." The helicopter's sound had faded, replaced by the peaceful rustle of corn stalks in the breeze. Sophia's phone buzzed again, but this time she turned it off completely. "Tell me about her," she said. "Your wife." What else did she use to say? Mike felt the familiar ache in his chest, but it was softer now, worn smooth by time and memory. Alice? She had wisdom for everything, used to drive Sarah crazy with her sayings. He smiled at the memory. But the one that stuck with me most was about wealth. She said real riches aren't in your wallet. They're in how many lives you touch, how many people you help along the way. "She sounds like my father," Sophia said. "Before the IPO, before the board, he used to say that every invention should make someone's life better, or it wasn't worth building." They drove in companionable silence for a while, the Nebraska landscape rolling by in gentle waves of green and gold. The back road was taking them in a roundabout way toward their destination, but neither seemed to mind the delay. "You know," Mike said finally, "sometimes the longest way around turns out to be the shortest way home." Sophia looked at the documents in her lap, then at the man who had become so much more than just a driver. "I'm starting to believe that." The sun was setting when Mike turned onto a dirt road that seemed to lead nowhere. Sophia had dozed off, the manila envelope of documents clutched protectively to her chest. She stirred when the truck came to a stop. "Where are we?" she asked, taking in the panoramic view of rolling hills and a small lake reflecting the golden hour light. "My secret spot," Mike said, cutting the engine. "Found it years ago during a storm. Been coming here ever since when I need to think." He pulled a worn star chart from his visor. "On clear nights you can see every constellation. Sarah and I used to camp here, learning the stars like her mom taught us." Sophia stepped down from the cab, her designer boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. The evening air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of wildflowers and distant rain. Here, far from boardrooms and highways, she looked younger, more real. "It's beautiful," she breathed, walking toward the lake. "I can't remember the last time I just stopped, looked at something beautiful without thinking about how to monetize it." Mike followed her to the water's edge, where a fallen log provided a natural bench. "Alice used to say, we get so busy making a living, we forget to make a life." Sophia sat on the log, carefully setting her documents aside. "Your wife was a wise woman." "Yeah, she was." Mike settled beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Would have liked you, I think. She had a way of seeing through people's masks, finding what was real underneath." The confession hung in the air between them. Sophia watched the sun paint the lake in shades of amber and rose, her corporate armor finally falling away completely. "I used to come to places like this with my father," she said softly, "before board meetings and stockholders, when the company was just a dream in our garage. He'd bring his notebook, sketch out inventions, but mostly we'd just be? She smiled at the memory. Last time was right before the company went public. I was 16, thought I knew everything. 16's a tough age, Mike said. Sarah's there now, thinks she's got the whole world figured out. Let me guess. She rolls her eyes when you try to give advice? Mike laughed. Every time, but somehow she still calls when she needs to talk. A comfortable silence settled over them. The first stars were appearing overhead, pinpricks of light in the deepening blue. Sophia leaned back, looking up at them. That's Polaris, she said, pointing. The North Star. Dad taught me that one. Said as long as you can find true north, you can't really be lost. Mike glanced at her, surprised. You know astronomy? Among other things. She turned to meet his gaze. CEO wasn't my first dream, you know. I wanted to be an astronaut. Then an engineer, like Dad. Somewhere along the way, spreadsheets replaced stars. Never too late to look up again, Mike said quietly. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary. Sophia was suddenly very aware of how close they were sitting, how the dying light caught the silver in Mike's hair, the quiet strength in his weathered hands. Mike, she started, then hesitated. I need to tell you something after tomorrow. After the board meeting, everything's going to change. The press, the scandal, the fallout, it's going to be chaos. I know, he said simply. You could walk. Away now. Harrison, the board, they're powerful people. They could make trouble for you for Sarah's college plans. Mike's laugh surprised her. Sophia, I've been driving trucks for 15 years. The only power those men have is what we give them. He picked up her envelope of documents. This is real power. The power to do right by people who trust. You impulsively, Sophia reached for his hand. His fingers were calloused, warm, steady, like him. Thank you, she whispered, for reminding me what matters. Above them, stars continued appearing, ancient light reaching down to touch this moment between a CEO and a truck driver, two souls finding true north in each other's company. The moment was broken by a distant rumble. Not thunder this time, but helicopters. The search hadn't given up. The helicopter sounds grew closer. Mike was already moving, gathering the documents while Sophia quickly checked her phone. They've tracked my device, she said, scanning messages. Harrison's got private. Security teams on every major road between here and New York. Her fingers flew over the screen. The board's called an emergency session for dawn. They're trying to force the vote before I can present the evidence. Mike led them back to the truck, his hand instinctively finding the small of her back as they hurried across the uneven ground. How long would it take to get to New York right now? 12 hours, with perfect conditions. She glanced at her watch, a simple digital timepiece that had replaced her designer one. Less than 9 hours until the vote. The truck's engine rumbled to life just as flashlight beams began sweeping the area. Mike killed the lights and eased them onto the dirt road, using his years of experience to navigate by starlight alone. We'll never make it in time, Sophia whispered, defeat creeping into her voice. Even if we could somehow avoid Harrison's people, the distance, maybe we don't need to be there in person. Mike kept his voice steady, mind working through. The problem, like he would, a difficult route. You said you sent copies to news outlets. They won't publish without my go-ahead. Too many legal implications, liability concerns. She ran a hand through her hair, disheveled now after their days. On the road, I have to be there, have to present the evidence myself. They reached the main road, and Mike made a decision. Instead of turning east toward New York, he headed west. What are you doing? Sophia asked, though there was more curiosity than alarm in her voice. Remember what you said about your father? Before the company went public, when he was still inventing things to help people? Mike navigated through the darkness with the skill of someone who'd spent half his life on these roads. What would he do in this situation? Sophia was quiet for a long moment, the only sound the steady thrum of the engine and the distant whir of helicopters fading behind them. When she spoke, her voice had changed. He wouldn't play their game, she said slowly. He'd He'd find another way, a better way. She pulled out her phone again, but this time, instead of checking messages, she opened her camera. "Mike, pull over, I need good light." He found a safe spot, and Sophia didn't wait for the truck to fully stop before she was pulling out the documents, spreading them on the dashboard. Her hands were steady now, her movements precise. "If we can't be there in person," she said, "phone. A camera focusing on key pages. We'll bring the truth to them another way." She looked up at Mike, a fierce light in her eyes. "My father built this company by speaking directly to people. No boardrooms, no corporate speeches, just honest truth about making lives better." Mike watched as she worked, understanding dawning. "You're going to go public, not through press releases or corporate channels." Her fingers flew over the phone's screen. "Social media, live, unfiltered. Let everyone see the evidence at the same time. The board, the shareholders, the workers, whose jobs are at stake." She paused, looking at him. "But once I do this, there's no going back. The stock will crash. Everything my father built will be saved," Mike finished. "Because the truth is what he really built. The rest is just numbers on paper." Their eyes met in the dim light of the cab. Something electric passed between them, a current of understanding and something more. Before either could speak, Sophia's phone buzzed with an incoming call. The screen showed Dad's old partner. She answered on speaker. "Uncle James." "Sophia." An older man's voice crackled through. "Girl, you've got the whole world looking for you. Harrison's telling everyone you've had some kind of breakdown. I found the proof, Uncle James, about the factories, the merger, all of it." A long pause. "Your father suspected something like this might happen. That's why he left those contingency documents with me, the ones about the worker ownership program he wanted to implement." Sophia's breath caught. "The plan to give employees stock options, but the board killed that years ago." "Killed the proposal, yes. But the legal framework is still there, waiting. Your father believed that someday someone would need to remind the company of its real purpose." The old man's voice softened. "He knew it would be you, Sophia. He always knew." Mike watched as tears filled Sophia's eyes, but when she spoke, her voice was strong and clear. "Uncle James, can you send me those documents? It's time to reinvent the company, not the way Harrison and the board want, but the way Dad always meant it to be." The choice hung in the air between them, the safe path of compromise versus the dangerous road of complete transformation. Mike reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers intertwining with hers. "Whatever you decide," he said quietly, "I'm with you." The small-town library's parking lot was empty, except for Mike's truck, its engine ticking as it cooled in the pre-dawn darkness. Inside, Sophia sat at a public computer, her fingers flying over the keyboard, while Mike kept watch by the window. They'd convinced the overnight librarian to let them in early. Something about the unlikely pair's earnestness had won her over. "Uncle James came through," Sophia said, scanning the documents he'd sent. "Dad's original vision wasn't just about giving workers stock options. He wanted to create a completely new kind of company, one where innovation and human dignity weren't just buzzwords." Mike moved from the window to look over her shoulder, close enough that she could feel his warmth. On the screen, complex legal documents were interspersed with hand-drawn diagrams and personal notes in her father's writing. "Your father seems like he was quite a man," Mike said softly. "He was." Sophia's voice caught. I wish I'd understood sooner what he was trying to build, what he was trying to teach me." She pulled up another window, a simple video recording setup. Her reflection stared back from the screen. No makeup, designer clothes wrinkled and stained. With truck grease, dark circles under her eyes, she looked nothing like the polished CEO from magazine covers, and somehow that felt exactly right. "How do I look?" she asked, smoothing her hair self-consciously. "Real," Mike answered without hesitation. "You look real." Their eyes met in the computer's reflection, and something unspoken passed between them. Sophia took a deep breath and pressed record. "My name is Sophia Chen, CEO of Chen Technologies. By now you've probably heard I'm missing, that I've had some kind of breakdown. She smiled slightly. The truth is, I'm exactly where I need to be, doing what I should have done years ago. She held up the first document. This is evidence of systematic fraud by members of our board, designed to justify closing 3 of our factories and eliminating 2,000 jobs. One by one, she displayed the damning papers, explaining each in clear, simple terms. But this isn't just about exposing wrongdoing, she continued. It's about remembering who we are. My father built this company in our garage, not to make millions, but to solve real problems for real people. She pulled up her father's contingency documents. That's why I'm announcing a complete restructuring of Chen Technologies. Effective. Immediately, we're implementing my father's original vision, a worker ownership program that will give every employee a direct stake in our success. The factories will stay open, but with a new mission, returning to the innovation and problem-solving that built this company. Mike watched as she transformed before his eyes, not into the corporate CEO, but into something new, a leader who had finally found her true voice. To our shareholders, yes, our stock price will take a hit, but I believe that doing the right thing is always the best long-term investment. She leaned closer to the camera. To our workers, I know I've been distant, focused on spreadsheets, instead of people. That changes today. To our board members who participated in this fraud, copies of all evidence have been sent to the SEC. You have until the markets open to resign. She paused, then smiled, a real warm smile that reached her eyes. And to my father, who taught me that the most valuable things can't be measured in dollars, I finally understand. The library door chimed. Mike turned to see Harrison and 2 security men entering, moving quickly toward them. Sophia, Mike warned quietly, but she was already reaching for the upload button. One last thing, she said to the camera. None of this would have happened without a truck driver named Mike Thompson, who reminded me what real wealth looks like. Sometimes you have to get lost to find your way home. She hit upload just as Harrison reached them. Step away from the computer, Sophia. Too late, she said, standing to face him. It's already streaming live to every Chen Technologies employee, shareholder, and news outlet in my contact list. Harrison's face contorted. Do you have any idea what you've done? The stock is going to crater. No, Sophia said calmly. I know exactly what I've done. I've saved my father's company. She turned to Mike. Ready for one more drive? He took her hand without hesitation. Where to? New York, she said. I think it's time I faced the board in person. Show them what real leadership looks like. As they walked past a stunned Harrison, Sophia paused. Oh, and Harrison, you're fired. The sun was rising over the Nebraska plains as Mike's truck merged onto the interstate. Every radio station was buzzing with news of Sophia's video, which had gone viral within minutes of uploading. Her phone hadn't stopped lighting up with notifications since they'd left the library. Stocks down 30%, she reported, scanning headlines. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. But look at this. The factory workers are organizing rallies. In support, they're live streaming from all 3 plants. Mike glanced at the phone she held up. On the screen, hundreds of Chen Technologies employees were gathered, holding handmade signs, standing with Sophia and People Over Profits and Chen's true vision. Your father would be proud, he said softly. CNN wants an interview. So does MSNBC, Fox, Bloomberg. She scrolled through messages. But this one matters. She held up an email from an employee. My daughter has cancer. The factory insurance is all that's keeping her treatment going. Thank you for saving our jobs. Tears sparkled in her eyes. Mike reached over and squeezed her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. A notification sound made them both jump. Someone's leaked security footage from the library, Sophia said, watching the clip. We're trending on social media. The CEO and the trucker sounds like a romance novel. Mike felt heat rise in his face. Guess people love an unlikely story. Is it really so unlikely? Sophia asked quietly. A CEO remembering her roots, a truck driver who sees people instead of cargo. Their eyes met briefly before Mike had to look back at the road. The moment was interrupted by a breaking news alert. Sophia's breath caught as she read it. 3 board members just resigned. They're confessing to everything. The SEC is opening an investigation. Rats deserting the sinking ship, Mike observed. The ship's not sinking, Sophia said firmly. It's changing course. She pulled up. Another message. Uncle James says he's gathered a group of original employees, engineers who worked with my father. They're ready to help rebuild the company the right way. Traffic was getting heavier as they approached Chicago. News vans appeared on the highway, clearly searching for them. Mike smoothly changed lanes, using his years of experience to keep them inconspicuous among the morning rush. Your video has over 1 million views, he reported, glancing at the truck's mounted tablet. Comments are overwhelmingly positive. People are calling you a different kind of CEO. Different, Sophia. Mused. I spent so many years trying to fit the board's image of a proper CEO. All those designer suits, corporate speeches. She looked down at her grease-stained blouse and laughed. Turns out, real leadership doesn't come from looking the part. A series of urgent messages lit up her phone. The remaining board members are trying to call an emergency vote to remove me. She smiled grimly, but they didn't count on one thing. What's that? Employee voting rights were built into my father's original company charter. They just needed to be activated, which I did this morning thanks to Uncle James's documents. The workers now own 20% of voting shares. Mike whistled low. Bet the board didn't see that coming. They never saw the workers at all. That was their biggest mistake. Sophia's phone buzzed again. Speaking of not seeing things coming, People magazine wants to do a feature on you. Mike nearly swerved. Me? I'm just a truck driver. A truck driver who helped save 2,000 jobs and exposed corporate fraud. Sophia's voice softened. A man who reminded a lost CEO what really matters. The morning sun caught the silver in Mike's hair, the laugh lines around his eyes. He looked nothing like the corporate titans Sophia had spent her career surrounded by, and everything like the kind of person her father would have trusted. Sarah called, he said, changing the subject. She saw the video, said she's never been prouder of her old man. Smart girl, Sophia replied. She gets that from her father. More news vans appeared ahead, clearly waiting at the next rest stop. Mike smoothly took an exit, choosing the back roads he knew so well. We'll be in New York by nightfall, he said. Ready to face the board? Sophia looked at her phone one last time, then turned it off. With you beside me, I'm ready for anything. The Chen Technologies headquarters stretched into the Manhattan sky, its glass facade reflecting the golden light of sunset. Mike pulled his truck into a loading zone, looking distinctly out of place among the luxury cars and town cars that lined the street. Last chance to back out, Sophia said, though they both knew she didn't mean it. Not a chance. Mike turned off the engine. But maybe lose the tie. Sophia glanced down at the emergency tie she'd bought at a truck stop, laughing as she removed it. Better. Much. Be yourself. That's what got us here. They made their way through the lobby, past startled security guards who clearly recognized Sophia, but weren't sure what to make of her current appearance or her companion. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent, charged with anticipation. Boardroom doors were imposing, all dark wood and brass fixtures. Through the glass walls, they could see the remaining board members assembled, along with Uncle James and a group of people Sophia recognized as original employees from her father's early days. "Ready?" Mike asked softly. Sophia squared her shoulders. "Ready." They entered together. The boardroom fell silent, all eyes taking in the unlikely pair, the CEO in her wrinkled, grease-stained clothes, and the truck driver who stood beside her with quiet dignity. "Sophia," The board chairman, Richards, broke the silence. This theatrical display has gone on long enough. You've destroyed billions in shareholder value with your little adventure. Actually, Uncle James spoke up, Chen Technologies' stock has stabilized. The markets are responding positively to transparency and ethical leadership. Novel concept, isn't it? Sophia moved to the head of the table, her natural authority now tempered with something deeper, genuine purpose. I've called this meeting, she began, to announce a new direction for Chen Technologies, one that honors my father's original vision. Your father built this company, Richard started. My father built this company in a garage, Sophia cut him off. With these people. She gestured to the original employees. He built it to solve problems, to make lives better, not to pad quarterly reports with fraudulent numbers. She pulled out the original merger documents. These papers prove that certain board members deliberately manufactured a crisis to justify closing profitable factories. That evidence is now with the SEC. Richard's face reddened. You have no proof. She has everything, Mike spoke for the first time, his quiet voice carrying unexpected weight, including her father's contingency plans for worker ownership. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Uncle James smiled. As of this morning, Sophia continued, 20% of voting shares have been transferred to employee ownership. Another 30% is controlled by my father's original trust, which I now direct. She smiled. In short, we have a controlling interest. This is outrageous, Richard sputtered. Who do you think you are? I'm my father's daughter, Sophia said simply, and I'm done letting this company forget its purpose. She turned to the original employees. Starting today, we're restructuring. The factories stay open, but with a new focus on innovation and problem-solving. Every employee becomes a stakeholder. We're going back to building things that matter. And what about him? Another board member gestured dismissively at Mike. Is the truck driver going to help run the company too? Sophia met Mike's eyes across the room, something electric passing between them. Actually, yes. Mike Thompson has shown more business wisdom and ethical leadership in 3 days than this board has in 3 years. I'm appointing him to head our new Ethics and Community Impact Division. Mike's eyes widened slightly. This wasn't part of their discussion, but before he could respond, Uncle James stood up. I second the appointment, he said, and I move for an immediate vote on the restructuring plan. You can't do this, Richards protested. The shareholders include the people who actually build this company, Sophia interrupted, and they've already voted. Check your phones. One by one, the board members pulled out their devices, faces falling as they saw the results of the employee shareholder vote flooding in. The restructuring plan had passed overwhelmingly. Now, Sophia said calmly, I believe several of you have resignations to tender. The rest can choose to be part of our new direction or leave. Either way, Chen Technologies returns to its true purpose today. She walked over to stand beside Mike, their shoulders almost touching. Meeting adjourned. The boardroom erupted into chaos, but Sophia and Mike barely noticed. They were looking at each other, seeing not a CEO and a truck driver, but 2 people who had found something unexpected on a dark highway in Nebraska. Truth, purpose, and just maybe love. Evening had settled over Manhattan by the time they left the Chen Technologies building. The media circus outside had grown, cameras flashing. As Sophia and Mike emerged, but instead of heading for the waiting company car, Sophia walked straight to Mike's truck. Ms. Chen, reporters called out, what about the stock price? Is it true about the worker ownership program? Who's the truck driver? Sophia paused. At the truck's door, turning to face the cameras. Chen Technologies is returning to its roots, solving real problems for real people. As for who he is, she looked at Mike, something soft in her expression. He's the person who reminded me what that means. Inside the truck's cabin, the familiar smell of leather and diesel provided a strange comfort after the corporate sterility of the boardroom. Mike started the engine, but didn't put it in gear. Ethics and Community Impact Division, he asked. Quietly, Sophia looked down at her hands. I should have discussed it with you first. I saw how you think about people, about doing what's right. The company needs that. She hesitated. But if you don't want Sarah's college tuition, Mike interrupted. That wasn't you. What? Got a call from Cornell while you were talking. To Uncle James. Her tuition, room and board, all covered by a new scholarship program. Sophia met his eyes. The Chen Foundation has always supported education. I just redirected some funds to more deserving candidates. Sophia. It's not charity, she said quickly. Sarah earned her place. The money was always meant for students like her. I just cut through the red tape. Mike was quiet for a long moment, his hands resting on the steering wheel. You know, I can't keep driving trucks if I take the position. I know. The road's been my life for 15 years. It's all I know. Sophia turned in her seat to face him fully. That's not true. You know people. You know the difference between right and wrong. You know how to see what really matters. She touched his arm lightly. But if the road is where you want to be, had a lot of time to think. These past few days, Mike said. About what Alice would say. About what kind of example I want to set for Sarah. He looked at Sophia. About how sometimes the best journeys take you somewhere you never expected. Outside, camera flashes still illuminated the gathering darkness. The corporate world of Manhattan seemed a million miles from the Nebraska highways where their story began. We could commute, Sophia suggested, between the factories. See how the worker program is going? Maybe find more truck drivers with hidden wisdom, Mike smiled. Doing real good in the real world? Exactly. She pulled out her phone, showing him messages from factory workers. Look, they're already forming innovation committees, suggesting improvements. One team has an idea for more efficient solar panels, another's working on affordable medical equipment. Your father would be proud, Mike said. Of all of it, I think. Sophia's voice softened. I think he somehow knew I'd need someone to remind me what really matters. Maybe not a truck driver specifically, but someone who'd pick up a strange passenger on a dark highway. Their eyes met, and the air in the truck's cabin grew charged with everything still unsaid. Before either could speak, Sophia's phone buzzed with an incoming video call from Sarah. Dad! Sarah's excited face filled the screen. You're all over the news. And Ms. Chen, I can't believe. Thank you for the scholarship, but more than that, thank you for showing what one person with courage can do. Mike watched Sophia's face soften as she talked with Sarah, saw the genuine warmth in her smile, the way she listened intently to his daughter's dreams. In that moment, he knew his decision was already made. So, Sophia said after they ended the call, ethics and community impact. Mike put the truck in gear, pulling away from the curb. On one condition. What's that? We take the long way sometimes. Back roads, see the real world we're trying to help. Sophia's smile lit up the darkened cabin. I think that can be arranged. Where to first? Well, Mike said, I know this quiet spot by a lake in Nebraska. Great place to watch the stars and plan how to change the world. As they drove through the Manhattan night, leaving the cameras and corporate towers behind, both felt the rightness of this new journey they were beginning. One that had started with a simple act of kindness on a dark highway and was leading them somewhere neither had imagined possible. 3 months later, a unique hybrid truck rolled into the Chen Technologies factory parking lot in Nebraska. It was a custom design, sleek enough for corporate visits but robust, enough for long hauls. The side panel read, Ethics and Community Impact Division in modest lettering. Sophia stepped down from the passenger side, wearing jeans and a practical blazer. The factory workers greeting her didn't see the polished CEO from magazine covers. They saw someone who looked comfortable walking factory floors, someone who listened. The solar panel prototype is ready, the lead engineer announced proudly. 40% more efficient, and we figured out how to cut production costs by redesigning the assembly line. "Show me," Sophia said, genuine enthusiasm in her voice. Mike joined them after parking, carrying two hard hats. He handed one to Sophia with practiced ease, their fingers brushing in a way that still sent electricity through both of them. The factory floor buzzed with energy. Where there had once been resignation about inevitable closure, now there was innovation, purpose. Workers stopped to share ideas with Mike and Sophia, showing them improvements, discussing challenges. The hierarchy that had once divided management from workers had dissolved into collaborative problem-solving. "Remember the first time we drove past here?" Mike asked, as they examined the new solar panel design. "When you were still pretending to be just another hitchhiker?" Sophia laughed. "I remember thinking I had to hide who I was. Now," she gestured at the vibrant factory floor, "now I finally know who I am." A commotion at the entrance drew their attention. Sarah burst in, still wearing her Cornell sweatshirt from the campus visit they'd just completed. "Dad, Miss Chen, you've got to see this." She held up her tablet, showing them social media posts. Other companies were following Chen Technologies' lead, implementing worker ownership programs and ethical business practices. "The Chen model," Sophia read from one headline, "How a CEO and a truck driver are revolutionizing corporate America." She shook her head. "They're still so focused on titles." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing," Mike said. "Shows people that wisdom can come from anywhere, that doing the right thing is good business." They walked through the factory together, a seemingly mismatched trio that somehow made perfect sense. Sarah peppered the engineers with questions about their innovations, showing the same practical intelligence that had drawn Sophia and Mike together. Later, as sunset painted the Nebraska sky in familiar golds and purples, they sat in their usual spot by the lake. The hybrid truck's engine ticked as it cooled, a sound that had become home to both of them. "The board approved the expansion of the worker program," Sophia said, leaning against Mike's shoulder, "and the new factory in Detroit is ahead of schedule." "And what about the other thing?" Sarah asked eagerly. "Did you ask him yet?" Mike looked between them. "Ask me what?" Sophia shot Sarah a mock stern look, then turned to Mike. "I was going to wait for the right moment, but we've been talking about consolidating the ethics division's operations, having a real home base. The factories need regular visits," Mike said cautiously. "They do, but I found this place." She pulled out her phone, showing him pictures of a house halfway between the Nebraska factory and corporate headquarters. "It has a garage big enough for the truck, a view of the stars, room for Sarah when she's home from college." Mike looked at the pictures, then at the two women who had become his family in the most unexpected way. "You asking me to put down roots, Ms. CEO? I'm asking you to build something with me," Sophia said softly. "Something real, like everything else we've built together." The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the lake. In the distance, the factory lights came on, a beacon of the change they'd created together. "You know," Mike said finally, "Alice always said home isn't a place, it's where you find your truth." "And have you," Sophia asked, "found your truth?" Mike pulled her closer as Sarah pretended to be very interested in the sunset. "Found it on a dark highway. Picked it up without knowing what I was really finding. So that's a yes to the house." "That's a yes to everything," he said simply. "The house, the work, the future, all of it." Sarah whooped with delight, while Sophia's smile rivaled the setting sun. Above them, the first stars began to appear. The same stars that had guided them together, now lighting the way forward on their greatest journey yet. The auditorium at Cornell University was packed. Students, faculty, and business leaders. You filled every seat, with more watching via livestream. On stage, Mike adjusted his microphone, still uncomfortable in the spotlight, but grounded by Sophia's presence beside him. "Ethics isn't complicated," he was saying, his natural authenticity cutting through academic theory. "It's about seeing people, not numbers, understanding that every decision affects real lives." A student raised her hand. "But how do you balance Ethical decisions with profitability. The Chen Technologies case study shows initial stock volatility. Show her, Sophia whispered to Mike with a smile. Mike pulled up their latest quarterly report. Our stock price today is 30% higher than before the restructuring. Employee-driven innovation has cut costs and increased productivity. Turns out people work harder when they have a real stake in success. From her seat in the front row, Sarah beamed with pride. She'd helped organize this lecture series on ethical business practices, combining her father's practical wisdom with Sophia's corporate experience. After the lecture, a group of aspiring entrepreneurs surrounded them. "Ms. Chen," one asked, "is it true you're launching an incubator program for ethical business startups?" "Actually," Sophia gestured to Mike, "that's his initiative. The ethics division isn't just about oversight, it's about fostering new ways of thinking about business." They made their way through the crowd to where Sarah waited. She was talking animatedly with Uncle James, who had flown in for the lecture. "Quite a change from boardroom presentations," the old man said, hugging Sophia. "Your father would have loved seeing you two shake up the corporate world like this." A reporter approached, notebook in hand. "Mr. Thompson, Ms. Chen, any comment on the growing number of companies adopting the Chen model of worker ownership?" Mike and Sophia exchanged glances, a whole conversation passing between them without words. It still amazed them how their unlikely partnership had sparked a movement. "Tell them about Pittsburgh," Sarah urged. Sophia nodded. "We're partnering with 3 major manufacturers to convert closing plants into worker-owned innovation centers. Mike's team is leading the transition." "And the truck?" the reporter asked with a knowing smile. "Still take the back roads when we can," Mike said. "Best way to understand what communities really need." Later, driving through upstate New York in their hybrid truck, Sophia reviewed messages on her tablet. The Detroit factory's new medical device prototype passed initial testing. Workers there are already suggesting improvements for the next version. "Remember when they thought factory workers couldn't innovate?" Mike shook his head. "All they needed was a real chance." Sarah, who had insisted on riding along instead of flying back to campus, leaned forward from the back seat. "Dad, tell Sophia about the scholarship program expansion." Mike glanced at Sophia. "Been working with the foundation. Thought we could help more kids like Sarah, not just with tuition, but with mentoring, internships. Show them there's no single path to making a difference." Sophia reached for his hand. "Perfect timing. The board just approved additional funding for educational initiatives." "The board?" Mike raised an eyebrow. "You mean the new board, with actual workers and community members?" "Amazing how well that works," Sophia laughed. "Almost like my father knew what he was doing with those contingency plans." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, each lost in thoughts of how much had changed since that fateful night on a Nebraska highway. The sun was setting behind them, painting the sky in colors that still reminded them of their first sunset. Together. "Oh!" Sarah suddenly remembered something. "Time magazine called again. They want you both for the most influential people cover story." Mike groaned. "Not more photos." "Yes, more photos," Sophia teased. "The world needs to see that. Real change doesn't always wear a suit and tie. The world needs to see that love stories can change more than just 2 people," Sarah added softly. Neither Mike nor Sophia corrected her use of the word love. It had been there all along, growing as naturally as their shared vision for a different kind of business, a different kind of life. The familiar neon sign of the truck stop diner flickered in the Nebraska twilight, just as it had 1 year ago. Mike pulled their hybrid truck into the same spot where he'd first stopped for a mysterious passenger in designer clothes and desperate eyes. "Can't believe you convinced the board to hold the anniversary celebration here," Mike said, helping Sophia down from the cab. "Wasn't hard," she replied. "They've learned to trust unconventional choices." She straightened his tie. He'd finally agreed to wear one for special occasions. "Besides, this place is part of our story now." Inside, the diner had been transformed. Factory workers mingled with executives, the old hierarchy dissolved by a year of shared ownership and purpose. The elderly couple from that stormy night was there, along with Earl from the repair shop, all part of the extended family their journey had created. Sarah rushed up to them, practically bouncing with excitement. "Everyone's here! And wait until you see what Uncle James brought." The old man approached, carrying what looked like a worn notebook. "Found this in your father's things, Sophia. Thought tonight was the right time to share it." Sophia opened the notebook carefully. Inside, in her father's handwriting, were sketches and notes. Dreams for the company's future that matched almost exactly what she and Mike had built together. "Look, at the date," Uncle James said softly. Sophia's breath caught. "This was right before he died. His last entries." "He knew you'd find your way back to what matters," Uncle James said, "though I doubt even he could have predicted it would take. A chance encounter with a philosophical truck driver. The waitress who'd served them that fateful night, now a shift supervisor at the local factory, clinked her glass for attention. The diner fell quiet as Sophia stepped up to speak. "A year ago, I walked into this diner running away from who I thought I had to be," she began. "Instead, I found who I was meant to be." She looked at Mike, her eyes soft. "We all did." Mike joined her, his quiet presence as steady as ever. "Someone wise once told me that the best journeys find you," he said. "This one found all of us." He gestured to the assembled crowd. "Look around. Factory workers who became innovators, executives who learned to listen, a company that remembered its soul." He reached for Sophia's hand. "And two people who had to get lost to find their way home." Sarah appeared with an old photo album. "Found this in Dad's truck," she said. "Mom would have loved seeing all this." The album fell open to a picture of Alice, her smile as warm as Mike remembered. Beside it was a newspaper clipping about Chen, Senior opening his first garage. "Our parents led the way," Sophia said softly. "We just had to be brave enough to follow their example." The celebration continued around them, but Mike led Sophia outside to the quiet parking lot. The stars were bright overhead, the same stars that had witnessed their first real conversation. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his jacket. "Been carrying it around, waiting for the right moment." It wasn't a ring. They both knew that would come later, in its own time. Instead, he handed her a set of keys. "The keys to your first truck?" Sophia asked, recognizing the worn leather fob. Mike nodded. "Thought maybe we could mount them in that fancy office of yours. Remember where this journey started." Sophia looked at the keys, then at the man who had changed her life with a simple act of kindness. "I have something for you, too." She pulled out an envelope. Inside was the official paperwork making Mike a full partner in Chen Technologies. Equal to her in every way. "The board approved it unanimously," she said, "though Sarah and Uncle James might have lobbied pretty hard." Mike stared at the papers. "Sophia, I never wanted—" "I know," she interrupted. "That's exactly why you deserve it. You never wanted power or position. You just wanted to do what's right." She moved closer, fitting perfectly against his side. "Like someone once told me, the best things in life find you when you're not looking for them." The morning sun painted the highway gold as their hybrid truck cruised west. In the passenger seat, Sophia reviewed quarterly reports, while Mike navigated the familiar roads. The just married sign on the back of their truck caught the light, drawing smiles from passing drivers. "Factory performance numbers are up again," Sophia said, setting aside her tablet. "Though I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to be working. On our honeymoon. Since when have we done anything the usual way?" Mike replied, his new wedding band catching the sunlight as he turned the wheel. The ceremony had been exactly right, held at the truck stop diner with Sarah as maid of honor and Uncle James officiating. Factory workers and executives had stood side by side, watching the CEO and the truck driver promise to travel life's road together. "Speaking of unusual," Sophia said, "Sarah's internship program is expanding. 10 more students signed up to split their time between the factory." floor and the corporate offices. Following her mother's example, Mike said proudly, breaking down barriers, showing there's no single path to success. They were heading to their spot by the lake, their first destination on a cross-country trip combining business and pleasure. Each stop would include a factory visit, continuing their tradition of seeing the real impact of their work. "Remember what you said that first night?" Sophia asked. "About cargo being somebody's livelihood, somebody's dreams?" "Look at you quoting." "A truck driver," Mike teased. "Look at you, corporate partner and ethical business pioneer," she countered. The truck's radio played softly, a news story about other companies adopting their worker ownership model. Their revolution in ethical business was spreading, changing lives far beyond Chen technologies. "Got a message from that student we met at Cornell," Mike said. "She's starting a company based on the Chen model, wants advice on building ethics into the foundation." "What did you tell her?" "Told her to start with people. The rest follows naturally." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the miles rolling by like pages of their shared story. The highway stretched ahead, full of possibility. "Sarah says we're trending again," Sophia mentioned, checking her phone. "Trucker and CEO is back, this time with wedding photos." "Still think it sounds like a romance novel," Mike said. "It is a romance," Sophia replied softly. "Just not the kind they expect. It's about falling in love with purpose, with doing right by people. The rest," she reached for his hand, "the rest was bonus." They turned onto the familiar dirt road leading to their lake. The hybrid truck, with its custom modifications for both corporate travel and long hauls, handled the rough path with ease. Like them, it had adapted to bridge two worlds. "Got plans for this place," Mike said as they parked. "Thinking about building a retreat center, somewhere for other companies to learn about ethical business practices." "Always thinking bigger," Sophia smiled. "Remember when you just wanted to make enough for Sarah's college? Remember when you thought success meant stock prices?" They walked to their usual spot by the lake, where a small plaque now marked the place they'd first opened up to each other. The inscription read, "Sometimes the longest way around is the shortest way home." "Uncle James called," Sophia said. "The archives found more of Dad's notebooks. He had plans for everything we're doing: worker ownership, ethical innovation, community impact. He just needed someone brave enough to make it happen." "He needed his daughter to find her way back to what matters," Mike corrected. "I was just the ride." Sophia turned to face him, her expression serious. "You were never just the ride. You were the wake-up call, the moral compass, the proof that wisdom doesn't need a corner office." Mike pulled her close, both of them looking out over the lake that had witnessed so much of their story. Above them, the same stars that had guided their first journey together were just becoming visible in the dusk. "So," he asked, "ready for the next adventure?" Sophia's answer was to pull out an old road map, not a GPS, but a paper map, like the ones Mike had used when she first met him. She'd marked it with all the Chen Technologies locations, creating a constellation of points across the country. "With you," she smiled. "Always. As long as we take the back roads sometimes." "Deal," Mike said. "After all, the best stories happen off the beaten path." They finished together. The sun set over their lake, painting the sky in the same colors that had witnessed their first sunset together. Their hybrid truck waited patiently behind them, ready for whatever journey came next. Ahead lay endless roads, countless lives to touch, and a future they would build together. The CEO and the truck driver, who had found more than just a ride on a dark highway in Nebraska. They had found their way home.